Hi, this is Sharon McNeil, and this is part 3 of a series of painting demonstrations showing you how to do a geometric still life. As you can see, the photograph is of the still life that I'm working on, and that's on the right. On the left is the actual painting. At this point, it's a full value painting, and this step I'll be showing you how to use a limited color palette to basically develop it into a full colored painting. Here are the colors we're using: ultramarine blue, cad yellow light, and alizarin crimson. And to get this right, I should probably put alizarin crimson on the end, moving it over here, and then I'm going to take the yellow and the alizarin, which is orange, and put that over there. So we get it in color order: red, yellow, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Next, so if I mix this up, not all colors are equal. So yellow is a weak color. You see how it takes a lot of yellow and not a lot of red to get this orange to be very bright. And here, with just a little blue and quite a bit of yellow, we still have a pretty solid green. So alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue make a really, really rich violet. If it's a dark violet, so if you mix a little white in it, then you can really see the character of the color. This one's very red. If I add a little more blue, I'll get more of a bluish color. So with these 6 colors, we'll get a pretty full palette. We can make pretty much anything we need. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start putting the light colors on the light side, the actual color that I see. And the most obvious one is the red. That really stands out. And I want to actually kind of establish the values, keep up with the values that I have. So I don't want to get it too much, but what I'm going to do is take a little bit more of the alizarin color. And there's no white in any of this. I'm trying to keep it. Red is tricky. If you add white to it, you start to make it look pink. And this is definitely not a pink red, so I'm going to add more saturated red along that shadow edge. So it's a little more orange where the light is hitting it, because the light source is yellow-orange, and that makes more sense. And then as it turns to a purer, darker red, and then it goes into this sort of neutral color. So I'm going to hold on that, and I'm going to look at the other colors that I can put in there. Now this color I've made is kind of a pinkish lavender, and I want to see how that looks a little bit too light. It might be the right value for the top of that, but it's really awfully pink. So I need to get, I think I added too much white to it for one thing. So not so much white. Okay, I think this is probably better. It might possibly need to be lighter, but what I want to do is add a little bit of orange and white on the top. I think that's a better match to the top. Some of this can even go on top of what's there. So I think I'm using 2 colors now. I'm going to start with what I have. I'm going to start with this first color. So we get a transition, we get a lighter color and a slightly darker color on that too. Okay, I'm going to put some yellow on the top of this box, and that yellow actually has a little tiny bit of orange mixed with it, just so it's not too cool. Could probably use a little more orange as I look at that color. But for starters, this is okay. It's mixed with white because yellow itself does not cover very well, and so in order to really be pure looking, it needs to have some white to help cover it. And so it sits on this box, and the box itself, this is a little darker version of that. And let this be. So the light's coming down. This is the lightest. This is still in light, but the light is sort of raking across it more than hitting it directly. So we'll have a little bit different value on that, although it's still light. Now this, inside this box, it's in shadow. So the shadow has been mixed with different, it's been mixed with green, it's been mixed with purple, anything that has blue in it to really make it seem darker. And then inside, it's still gonna have to get darker in there, but then I'm gonna take I'll try some more purple and some more, also I could do blue. The reason I'm doing purple is because yellow tends to get so green looking that it's really hard for people to know that's okay. So it might help if you had purple, you're adding red at the same time. So it's a darker color. So, because we see it, there's some reflected color on here too. I'm gonna just go over this very lightly and let some of that purple show through. So it already is pretty dark looking around the apple. Okay. So I have the coolest shadows on that yellow facing away towards me. And there's also a really cool shadow right coming off this right here. And I can follow that box up a little bit. This actually comes out like this, so I can paint that in there. But you know, there's a lot of reflected light in this, and it's right about here. I just want to make sure I don't get too light. I'm going to remember that this is going to dry darker. The shadow's darkest against the object and then lighter as it moves away. So I want to be really cognizant of that. But this might actually be fine if I leave it this way. And then this, basically I want this bright yellow that I have here to come all the way to the corner, because that's the line that's the top here. And this is, it's kind of hard to make a straight line sometimes. The best way to make a straight line I've found is with a bright brush, because the bristles are kind of stiff. This is a filbert, it's curved. This is a flat that has been used a lot, so it's kind of shaped a little bit like a filbert. This is a bright, and you see how short those bristles are? As they wear down, they get shorter. So this is the difference between a bright and a flat. A flat has longer bristles. So these stay a little stiff, and sometimes that's easier to draw. The green that I made for the top of the apple has a little tiny bit of a warm yellow, a little bit of orange in it. That's because the light is hitting that, it's coming down directly from the top. On the side of the apple, it is going to be slightly darker and it will be less warm because it's still getting light on the side of the apple, but the light is raking across the front. It's not hitting it directly. So we've got this orange apple up here. I'm going to go ahead and, if it's not as intense, kind of a peachy color when you add white to it. That's okay, I can add some actual orange on top afterwards, but they'll have this underneath it as a base. You can add a little bit more of a red or orange right in here, where the the shadow, it turns into shadow at this corner, this edge, so that's going to help. Okay. And this red apple down here is all dark, so I could put in a really deep dark red with some shadow in it, and then maybe just a touch of, just a little bit of color in that. And I do see in the box a bit of shadow, so I can take some of the yellow colors the yellow shadow colors, the greens and the browns that I made, and I can see if a little bit of that will suggest. This is more of a purple. I'm thinking that might hold up a little bit better. This is the tricky thing about color. If I add white to the blue, I cool it off a lot. but the blue is supposed to be a little bit in the light, so it should have some warmth to it. Well, ultramarine blue is kind of warm, so let's just see if I put this on there. You see how it's so intense, okay? So let's add a little bit more white to it. But if I take a little bit of, I'm gonna add a little red to it, just a smidge, see if you notice any difference. And put a darker, a more pure blue around the edges. Okay, that gives me a little bit of that look. It is certainly darker here, but I'm gonna add a little bit. It's still wet, so I can do this, but it's not gonna take long. Pretty soon it's gonna be dry and you can't do it, so just brush that in. Okay, I think that's good enough for now. Just to indicate that, I'll work in the shadow a little bit later. Ultramarine blue has got some red in it. So no matter what I do with green, it's never gonna look so pure. So I gotta, get the closest thing that I can. I'm actually mixing a little bit of white and a little yellow in with this to see how that works. Let's see if this works as a top color. That's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead. I think I can't get much, I don't think I can get much brighter than this green right here. And I see a tiny little bit of green on this other side of that apple. That is really helpful because it just helps me see where the shadow ends. And I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. So, light on the top. This is going to be light, but not quite as light. I want a clean edge, so I'm going to wipe this like that to make it easier to just pull this brush stroke and then pull this brush stroke. Hopefully that'll work going behind that. So you see a little bit of a difference. Might be able to get away with just a little bit more light on this to really push that green, to really make that top lighter. It's not as green though, and so that's, something you kind of lose with when you're working color. Okay, now the top of the box is sort of a yellow blonde color. It's going to have lots of yellow in it. It's going to help if I actually do a little bit of drawing on this. So now that I'm at this point, I'm going to take some purple, so I kind of make a brown in that case. And I could basically, this goes back at an angle, so I want to create some other lines that go back. There's another one. Right through the shadow, and then that's going to help me with the layout. The other thing I'm seeing is, this is the front of a board. So is this. So those will be helpful to have marked out there. Now, on top of it, it's very light earth tone, sort of like yellow ochre or something like that. And so it's got to have a little bit of everything in it. I'm going to go ahead and pull these marks back, leaving a little bit of that part in between showing. I might have to go into the cone to do this. So there's a good reason not to try to finish everything at once, because you might have to undo stuff to be able to pull that mark through. So here, where I've had to pull the brush strokes of the board through the cone, I'm going back and redrawing it, and I'm wiping it off with a rag. I can always go back and fix it when I do the shadow side, but right now I just want to get the drawing back fixed in. Now I've loaded my brush with a sort of cinnamon brown color that I've made. It's got some warmth in it, and I'm going around the edge of the cone so that I get that nice curve that I want. I want to keep a loaded brush so that I can drag it across the surface of the lit side and concentrate on the lights. It's a little bit lighter. I'm pushing the light a little bit more than what I see on the actual cone because I want it to seem like the light. So the high point of that little ball, where I see a little bit lighter color on the edge of the cone as it faces the light.